In this video, you will learn how to listen and subscribe to a podcast on an iOS device. That's an iPhone or an iPad. I'll first show you specifically on how to do it for my show, the Podcast Planner, and then for other shows that you're interested. All right, let's get started. So I like to make it easy on my listeners by giving them this page. It's thepodcastplanner.com/podcast. And you'll be taken to a page that looks like this, listing all of the different ways that you can listen to my podcast. Here you have right up on top the RSS feed. It's very similar to what you do for a blog. You'll grab their RSS link or their blog link and then put it into something like Feedly. Well, you can do the same thing for podcast on certain apps. I'll get into that later in this video. What we want to focus on are the different ways that we can listen to the podcast on an iOS device. So here you have iTunes. So I can go ahead and just click on that. And I'll just take open. And there you go. You can click on that purple outlined button that says subscribe. You can also actually review a podcast here and then view related podcasts there. So that's one way that you can listen to the podcast on the iOS native podcast app. If you don't want to use the native podcast app, which is that purple one there, you can go back to the website. And let's say you do listen to on Google Play Music within the iOS app. Now, at the time of this recording, I was having some issues with it, so I can't demonstrate that right now. But you can go ahead and give that a try yourself and see if it's working. Let's say you use the app called TuneIn as your native listening app for all audio programs. Well, you can just go here and click on TuneIn, and it will load this page. You can actually select Listen in App if you have it downloaded onto your device, which I have pre-downloaded into the app. So that's what this looks like here. When you select Favorite, you are subscribing to the show, and you can get more information there within TuneIn. So we'll go back here, click that out. Let's say you listen to your podcast on Spreaker. So let's go ahead and select Spreaker there. Have to kind of stop it before it starts playing any audio. So there you go. This is one of the first times I'm opening up Stitcher, so it gives me some prompts to do. So if I want to add this to, I want to subscribe to the show, you click on the plus button up there. And you can listen to the episodes and get more information within Stitcher. Let's say you listen to your podcast on Spreaker. This is a great platform. You click on Spreaker. And there you have it within the browser, which is a little funny that it didn't prompt the app because I do have the app here on my phone. So you can go here within Spreaker and select more, do a search, type in Podcast Planner, and there it is. You can start to subscribe to the podcast and listen to the episodes. I highly recommend always subscribing to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. Very entertaining. Now we'll go to one of my favorite apps here on the iOS, which is Overcast. Overcast has a lot of capabilities that the native podcasts app kind of lacks, but either podcast app works. So I'll click here on Overcast, see if it prompts the app, which it does. And it quickly takes you to the Podcast Planner podcast. Then I can hit subscribe, and there's all the episodes right now. This is a fairly new show at this time, so that's only one episode there. It's very cool because you can see the show notes and all that. And that's what this looks like here. Now, remember that I said you can add specifically an RSS feed yourself into the podcast app of your choice. I'm not sure if all the podcast apps can do this, but I know specifically with Overcast, it's a really great opportunity to do that. So I would go here back to my website, copy the link that's within the first banner up there that you see that it says the Podcast Planner on RSS. I'll copy that link, open up Overcast, and then select the plus sign up on top. And where it says add URL, I'll type in the RSS feed there and subscribe that way. That's another way that you can add a podcast to Overcast. So now if you're interested in another podcast and subscribing on these different platforms, it's very easy. You can go to the podcast app. You're typically greeted with a featured section, which looks like this. So then you can click on, let's say, Invisibilia, and then just hit that subscribe button that you see there on the side. Then I'll get out of there. Same thing for Overcast. I'll go over here, click on the plus sign, and it's really cool because they have their own little featured section as you're adding here. So this is another cool way to do it. So you can choose up on top where it says search directory if you know specifically which podcast you want to subscribe to. So for example, I can type in Mark Maron. So there's Mark Maron. Got to backtrack a little bit there. Click on it and hit subscribe. And that's how you add a podcast on Overcast. I'll get out of here, go to TuneIn. And here you have a browsing section. You can actually select podcasts to browse what they have featured on their podcast app. And same thing here. Just about every podcast app is going to have a search little icon there. And this is where you will type in another podcast. There it is. And there's his show. And you can favorite there. Same thing in Spreaker. You can do your little search here if you click on more at the bottom. And then select the search bar up on top and then clear out the previous search in this case. And I can click on Home Gadget Geek and then select the podcast and favorite. Same thing with Stitcher. I'll go over to Stitcher, go back to the home page, which is this. Right up on top there, you see the search icon. Type in the name of the podcast and it will appear and you can subscribe to the show. So these are the different ways that you can subscribe and listen to a podcast on an iOS device. The native app for iOS is the podcast app up on top that's purple. The rest are downloaded that you can get from the App Store. They're, for the most part, free. There are some features in Stitcher and Overcast that you can upgrade for other features. So I definitely suggest that you check those out. My favorite app here on the iOS is Overcast. Check it out. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section.